The first spark. The stars were cold and distant, as always. For centuries, the galaxy had spun in silence, with few daring to venture into the uncharted depths of space. But now, in this forgotten corner of the universe, something had changed. A human ship, the Vanguard, a small exploration vessel from Earth, was slowly drifting through this part of space. Its crew was unaware of the significance of their mission. To them, it was just another routine exploration, another set of readings to analyze and another planet to study. But they would soon learn that this journey would be like no other. The Vanguard had been dispatched to study an anomaly, an unexplained disturbance in the fabric of space. It had started as a faint signal, barely detectable, but over time, it grew stronger. Earth's best scientists had speculated that it could be an undiscovered black hole, a strange new type of energy, or even a sign of something, or someone, unknown. The crew was eager to get there and investigate. Captain Emily Wren stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the view screen. The stars outside seemed almost too distant, their light dim and cold. She adjusted the controls, steering the ship closer to the anomaly. Her fingers hovered over the console, feeling the hum of the ship beneath her. She knew that something was about to happen, something big. "What are we looking at, Lieutenant?" she asked, turning to the young officer beside her. Lieutenant Harris, a recent graduate from the academy, was in charge of communications. Harris's fingers danced over his console, his eyes wide with curiosity. It's definitely not a black hole, Captain. It's not anything we've seen before. The energy readings are off the charts." "Is it stable?" Captain Wren asked, her voice calm, though a spark of concern flickered in her mind. "Hard to say, Captain. It fluctuates. It's almost like something is trying to make contact. But there's no pattern to it," Harris replied, his brow furrowing. The captain looked back at the screen. The swirling mass of energy was mesmerizing. It pulsed and shimmered as if alive. She could feel the tension in the air, a growing unease spreading among the crew. They were used to unknowns, but this was different. This felt intentional. "Can we send a probe?" she asked, trying to focus. "Already in progress, Captain," Harris answered. The moment the words left his mouth, the ship shuddered. A sudden jolt rocked the vessel, and the lights flickered. The crew gasped, and alarms blared across the bridge. Captain Wren steadied herself, gripping the armrests of her chair. "What was that?" she demanded, her heart racing. "I'm not sure," Lieutenant Harris said, his voice tight. "The probe's readings, they just spiked. It's like it's being pulled in." Before anyone could react, a massive force seemed to grip the ship. The Vanguard lurched violently to the side, throwing the crew off balance. Wren's grip tightened, her jaw clenched. She knew they were in danger, but she didn't understand why. "Shut off the engines, full reverse," she commanded, trying to regain control of the situation. But nothing responded. The Vanguard was being pulled toward the anomaly, no matter how hard they tried to fight it. The force was too strong. The ship was drawn forward, towards the shimmering mass. The crew could only watch in stunned silence as the stars outside began to blur and twist, the very fabric of space itself warping. The energy from the anomaly began to pulse more intensely, its presence overwhelming. Suddenly, a loud noise pierced the silence, a crackling sound like static on a radio. The screens flashed, showing strange symbols and patterns that the crew had never seen before. It was like something was trying to communicate with them, or perhaps control them. "What is that?" Harris whispered in awe. The symbols grew more complex, swirling on the screen faster and faster. A feeling of dread washed over Captain Wren. It was as if something, or someone, was watching them, waiting. She turned to her crew, her voice firm, but filled with uncertainty. "We need to get out of here. Now." But as she spoke, the energy from the anomaly intensified. The Vanguard was no longer under their control. It was trapped, caught in a strange web of forces that they could not begin to understand. They were at the mercy of something far beyond their comprehension. And then, as suddenly as it had started, everything went dark. For a moment, there was complete silence. No alarms, no hum of the engines, just stillness. It was as if time itself had stopped. Then the stars reappeared. But they were no longer the same stars. The view outside the ship was nothing like what they had seen before. The darkness of space was gone, replaced by a vast, shimmering landscape. The stars seemed closer, as if they were within reach. And the colors, they were unlike anything the humans had ever seen. The anomaly had not just pulled them closer. It had transported them somewhere far from Earth. Captain Wren's heart raced in her chest. She didn't know where they were, but one thing was certain. They weren't alone anymore. The ship's comms crackled to life again, and a voice, alien, deep, and menacing, boomed across the system. "You dare enter our domain, humans?" The crew stared in shock, unable to respond. They had just come face to face with something far more ancient and powerful than they could have ever imagined. The spark had been lit, and with it, a chain of events that no one could predict had begun. As Captain Wren stared at the view screen, her heart pounded in her chest. The alien voice that had reverberated through the comms still echoed in her ears. It was deep, guttural, and full of authority, far beyond anything the crew had ever encountered. The atmosphere on the bridge shifted from one of confusion to sheer tension. The crew members, once calm and focused, now appeared visibly shaken. "Captain, what just happened?" Lieutenant Harris's voice trembled slightly, his hands trembling as they hovered over his console. Wren swallowed hard, still trying to make sense of the impossible situation they were in. They had been pulled out of their familiar galaxy, transported to this strange, unknown place in an instant. She could no longer see the stars they once knew. They had been replaced by an eerie, glowing expanse that stretched endlessly before them. "I don't know, Harris," she said softly, her voice calm but strained. "But I need answers. We need to stay focused." She turned her attention to the view outside the ship. The massive energy anomaly that had once pulled them in had disappeared. In its place, the cosmos itself seemed different, like they had crossed into another realm. The stars now shone with an unnatural brilliance, casting strange shadows on the ship. The emptiness of space had been replaced with something more sinister. Where are we?" Lieutenant Harris asked, clearly scared but still trying to do his job. Before Wren could answer, the alien voice echoed again, filling the ship with its cold, haunting tone. "Humans, you are far from your home. The cost of your intrusion will be paid in full." Wren's eyes widened, and she exchanged a quick glance with her crew. She couldn't help but feel the weight of the words. It was as if these beings knew exactly who they were, knew they were from Earth. And more importantly, they knew the humans were trespassing in a space they had no right to be. She stepped forward, her thoughts racing. "Get me all available data on this place. What is this? Where are we? And who are they?" Her voice had a sharp edge to it now, cutting through the heavy silence that had gripped the bridge. The tension was suffocating, but Wren couldn't afford to show weakness. They were in a precarious position, and every second mattered. Harris quickly tapped at his console, his fingers flying across the keys. "Captain, the sensors aren't picking up any familiar readings. It's like we're in a completely different part of the universe. I'm also detecting faint life signs, but they're unlike anything we've cataloged. These readings are strange. It's like the laws of physics are different here." The realization hit Captain Wren like a ton of bricks. They weren't just far from home. They had entered an entirely different dimension, one where the rules that governed their own universe didn't seem to apply. They had crossed a line, a threshold that they couldn't come back from. "Is there any way to communicate with them? Can we reason with them?" Captain Wren asked, her mind spinning with possibilities. She wasn't a military leader. She was a scientist, a scholar, but even she knew the situation was dire. Harris hesitated, looking down at his console. I'm not sure. The language seems too complex, and the way the signals come through. They're not using any form of communication we understand. This is different. The thought of being caught in this unknown space, with no means of communication or escape, made Ren's stomach twist with anxiety. But she couldn't show it. Not now. "Lieutenant, can you get the ship's AI to try and analyze their signal?" she asked. "Yes, Captain," Harris replied quickly, adjusting the settings. "I'll send the request right away." For a moment, the bridge fell into a tense silence, each crew member lost in their thoughts. The hum of the ship was the only sound, a constant reminder that they were still adrift in this strange, unfamiliar place. Suddenly, the comms crackled again, and the voice returned, this time with more intensity. "Humanity's presence has long been forgotten. Your kind's arrogance has no place here. You trespass on sacred ground. Prepare to face judgment." The words sent a chill down Ren's spine. They weren't just speaking in warning anymore. There was a sense of malice, of something much darker behind those words. The crew couldn't just be passive observers. They had angered something ancient and powerful. "We need to get out of here," Ren said, her voice rising with urgency. She turned to Harris. "Full reverse. Get us out of this anomaly." But the ship didn't respond. "The controls aren't working, Captain," Harris said, panic creeping into his voice. "We're stuck." A cold dread filled the room as the realization hit everyone simultaneously. They weren't in control of the Vanguard anymore. They were trapped in a place they didn't understand, facing an enemy they couldn't comprehend. Ren gripped the edge of her chair, her mind racing. They were facing an intelligence far beyond anything humanity had ever known. And yet, in the face of this unimaginable power, all she could do was fight. The crew's only hope was to survive this unknown trial and figure out how to escape. But Ren couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. The aliens, whoever they were, had only just begun to show their power. And the consequences of their anger were still unknown. A new thought crossed Ren's mind. Maybe these beings weren't just powerful. Maybe they were older than time itself. And what if this judgment they spoke of wasn't just a warning? The Vanguard was no longer a ship on a mission. It had become a prisoner, trapped in the heart of something far greater and far more dangerous than anyone aboard had ever imagined. And they were about to learn just how unforgiving the universe could be when humans dared to trespass. The silence on the bridge was deafening. Captain Ren gripped the armrest of her chair, trying to steady her breathing. The crew was on edge, their every move governed by the chilling voice that had echoed across their comms. It wasn't just a warning anymore. It felt like a prelude to something far worse. "Captain," Lieutenant Harris's voice was barely above a whisper. "The ship's AI has found something. There's a hidden signal within their message. It's not just a warning. It's a command." Ren's pulse quickened. "A command? What kind of command?" Harris hesitated for a moment, as if considering how to phrase what he was about to say. "It's a directive, Captain. It's telling us to remain in this place. We can't leave, no matter what we do. It's like we're being held here by something far beyond our understanding." The weight of his words sank deep into Ren's chest. They were trapped. There was no escape, no easy way out of this nightmare. "We need to figure out what they want," Ren muttered under her breath. "Whatever it is, we can't just sit here and wait for them to make their move. We need to understand why they're doing this." The crew remained quiet as Harris worked furiously at his console, trying to decode the strange signals. Ren glanced at the rest of the crew, each of them visibly nervous, their eyes darting between their stations. They were all waiting for some kind of order, some kind of solution. "Captain," Harris spoke again, breaking the silence. "The signal, it's not just a warning or a command. It's like they're trying to manipulate the very fabric of reality. The AI says it's altering the space around us. It's like the laws of physics are being twisted." Ren leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Altered space. Explain. Harris looked at her, his face pale. It's as if the stars themselves are changing. The space outside the ship isn't the same as it was before. It's warping, bending, like we're being drawn into something huge. The realization hit Ren like a hammer. The space outside wasn't just strange. It was being distorted. And the aliens weren't just manipulating their ship. They were manipulating everything around them, creating an inescapable trap. How do we fight that? Ren muttered under her breath. She had no answers, no clear plan. She was just as much a prisoner as her crew. Before she could formulate a response, the comms crackled again. The voice returned. This time, it was colder, more distant, like an entity that had long ago lost patience. "You are trespassers," the voice boomed, the sound reverberating through the walls of the ship. "Your kind's arrogance has drawn the attention of forces far beyond your comprehension. Your fate is sealed." The crew stiffened at the words. The finality in the voice was unmistakable. The alien entity wasn't just issuing threats. It was laying down the law. Ren's mind raced. There had to be something, anything, they could do to break free from this trap, but the more she thought, the clearer it became. The aliens were toying with them, and there was no way out, not without facing whatever these beings had in store. The ship's lights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the bridge. The very air seemed to grow heavier, as if the universe itself was pressing down on them. Ren felt it, something ancient, something far more powerful than anything humanity had ever faced. She turned back to Harris. "Any progress on those readings?" "Not much, Captain," Harris replied, his voice strained. "The signal is coming from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It's like they're omnipresent. But I think I'm starting to see a pattern. It's not random." "What do you mean?" Ren asked, leaning forward, her mind focusing on the faintest shred of hope. Harris ran a hand through his hair, a look of disbelief crossing his face. "I think these beings, or whatever they are, have been observing us for a long time. They knew who we were before we even arrived here. They knew about Earth, about our species, and they'd been watching us grow. This isn't just about a threat. It's about something much deeper, something we've stumbled into, something we weren't meant to understand." Ren's heart skipped a beat. "What are you saying, Harris?" Harris swallowed, his eyes wide. "I think these aliens, they've been monitoring us for centuries, watching us evolve. And now, they're judging us. We've crossed a line, and the consequences will be far worse than we imagined." The room fell silent again, the weight of Harris's words sinking in. It wasn't just about their ship, their mission, or even their survival. This was bigger than that. They were facing the wrath of something ancient, something whose judgment could mean the end of everything. The truth was undeniable. Humanity had trespassed in the wrong place, and now the universe was about to show them the true cost of their actions. Ren's mind raced as she tried to find a solution, but there was no escaping this. The universe had drawn its line in the sand, and humanity had crossed it. "We have to get out of here," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. But deep down she knew there was no way out. The universe had made its judgment, and the storm was coming for them. The aliens weren't just a threat. They were the harbingers of an unimaginable reckoning. The crew was about to learn that the universe had its own rules, and humanity, for all its power and pride, was not exempt from them. The tension in the air was palpable as Captain Ren stood at the helm of the ship, her hands gripping the console tightly. The crew around her worked in a frenzy, trying to decipher any signs of weakness in the alien signal. But as each second passed, it became more and more apparent that they were not just fighting an external force. They were battling an ancient cosmic judgment that was far beyond their understanding. The voice on the comms had fallen silent for now, but the weight of its words echoed through Ren's mind. "Your fate is sealed." Those words weren't just threats. They were a declaration, a promise from a force that was older than time itself. Ren turned to Harris, who was still trying to make sense of the strange readings on his console. His brow was furrowed, his face pale, and for the first time in a long while, Ren saw fear in his eyes. "Any breakthroughs, Lieutenant?" Ren asked, her voice steady despite the anxiety coursing through her veins. Harris shook his head, his fingers moving rapidly over the keyboard. "No, Captain. It's like the signal has no end. It's not just here. It's everywhere, all around us. It's not coming from a specific location. It's as if the universe itself is speaking through it." Ren felt the weight of his words. The universe itself. The words were hard to comprehend, and yet they seemed to make sense. It wasn't just an alien species threatening them. No, it was something more profound, something deeper. "We're being hunted by something that doesn't care about our ships, our weapons, or our technology," Ren muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "It doesn't see us as a threat. It sees us as an experiment." The thought sent chills down her spine. Were they simply pawns in an ancient cosmic game? Or had they unwittingly crossed a line that had been drawn long before humanity even existed? The ship's lights flickered again, and the hum of the engines seemed to slow down, as though the ship itself was struggling against an invisible force. Ren's eyes narrowed as she watched the external view screen. The stars, once bright and familiar, now seemed dim and distant, as though the universe itself was pushing them away. "Captain, you need to see this," Harris called urgently. He gestured toward the screen, and Ren hurried over to his side. On the external view screen, a strange distortion was forming. It was subtle at first, a shift in the starfield, a ripple in space. But as Ren watched, the distortion grew larger, darker. The fabric of space itself seemed to be warping, twisting, as though it were alive. "This isn't just space warping," Ren said, her voice laced with disbelief. "It's a tear, a rip in the very fabric of the universe." Harris nodded, his face grim. "It's like they're trying to break reality itself. Captain, whatever they're doing, it's bigger than anything we can fight." Ren took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "We have to find a way to stop them. If we don't, this tear in space could spread. It could destroy everything." The crew fell silent as they watched the rip grow, the edges of space bending and folding in on themselves. The stars seemed to lose their shine, like the universe itself was losing its will to exist. But as the crew watched in horror, something more terrifying happened. The rip began to move toward them, a tidal wave of cosmic energy that seemed to be pulling them into it, dragging their ship closer to the heart of the distortion. "Captain, we're being pulled in," shouted Lieutenant Stevens, his voice filled with panic. "We can't break free. The ship, it's not responding." Ren's heart raced as she frantically tried to gain control of the ship's systems, but it was futile. The pull of the tear in space was too strong. They were being sucked into something far beyond their control, and as they were drawn deeper into the void, Ren could hear the voice again. The chilling, distant voice that had spoken to them before. "You were warned," it echoed, as if the very fabric of space itself was speaking. "This is the price for your arrogance." The words were cold, final, and Ren felt the weight of them settle over her like a heavy blanket. The universe had spoken, and now it was enacting its punishment. "We're not going to make it, are we?" Harris whispered, his voice shaking. Ren's gaze remained fixed on the growing distortion in front of them. "I don't know," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. "But we're going to face it head on." The ship was hurtling toward the tear now, the pull growing stronger with each passing second. Ren had no more answers, no more strategies. All she had was the cold, hard truth. The universe was judging them, and there was no way to escape. The stars outside the ship began to disappear, swallowed by the darkness. The crew fell silent as they braced for the unknown. And as they were pulled deeper into the heart of the tear, Ren couldn't help but wonder if this was the end of humanity's journey, or if it was just the beginning of a far greater test. The wrath of the cosmos was closing in. and they were about to face its full force. The ship shook violently as it was dragged deeper into the rift. The once familiar hum of the engines was now replaced with an eerie silence, broken only by the crackling sounds from the malfunctioning systems. Ren's hands were clenched into fists as she fought to maintain control, her eyes darting between the flickering console and the growing distortion outside the view screen. "We're entering something. Something not of this world," Harris muttered, his voice low and trembling. Ren didn't respond. There was nothing she could say. They were no longer in control. The universe had made its decision, and it was dragging them to the very heart of its judgment. The fabric of reality around them, twisted and bent, the stars turning into streaks of light as the ship continued its descent into the unknown. But then, just as quickly as it began, the ship was still. The violent shaking stopped. The hum of the engines returned, though it sounded strange, distant, almost like a whisper in the background. Ren's breath caught in her throat as she looked up at the view screen. What she saw made her heart skip a beat. They were no longer in the void of space. The stars were gone. Instead, a vast, swirling darkness surrounded them. The void stretched out, an infinite expanse that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. It was as though they had crossed into a realm where the laws of physics, time, and space had no meaning. What is this place?" Ren whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of the ship's systems. Harris was the first to speak, his face pale and wide-eyed. "I don't know, Captain, but we're not alone." Ren turned toward him, confusion written all over her face. "What do you mean?" "There's nothing here, just darkness." But Harris's eyes weren't on the view screen anymore. He was staring at something behind her, something that sent a chill through Ren's bones. "Captain, look," Harris said, his voice shaky. Ren turned slowly, her breath hitching as she saw it. A figure, glowing faintly in the darkness, was standing just beyond the edge of the ship. It was tall, almost towering, with an otherworldly aura that made the air around it seem to hum with energy. The figure was shrouded in a strange, flowing cloak, its features obscured by a veil of light. Ren's heart pounded in her chest. She had seen alien life forms before, but this was different. The presence of the figure was overwhelming, and for the first time in her life, she felt truly small, insignificant in the grand scheme of things. "What is that?" Ren asked, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know," Harris replied, his voice cracking. "But it's not human. And it's not alien, not in any way we've ever encountered." The figure didn't move. It stood there, a silent, intimidating presence that seemed to command the very fabric of space around it. Then, without warning, the voice returned, cold, distant, and filled with ancient power. "You stand before the judgment of the cosmos," the voice echoed. It wasn't coming from any speakers. It was everywhere, in their minds, in the very air. It was the voice of something that existed beyond the universe itself. "The arrogance of your kind has led to this moment. You have violated the balance of existence. Now you will face the consequences." Ren's breath caught in her throat as she realized the full gravity of the situation. This wasn't just a conflict with an alien race. This was something much larger, something that had been watching humanity for eons, something that was prepared to erase them for their trespasses. We didn't do anything wrong," Ren managed to say, though her voice shook with uncertainty. The figure remained silent for a long moment, as if contemplating her words. Then it spoke again, its voice sending ripples through the ship's hull. "Your very existence is a disturbance to the order of the cosmos," the figure declared. "You have harnessed the power of the stars, delved into the depths of space, and touched the unknown. All of this without understanding the true cost. Now you will answer for your actions." Ren's mind raced. This wasn't just about humanity's survival. It was about their very place in the universe, about their existence itself. She felt a cold sweat trickle down her spine. They had been arrogant, yes, but this was more than just a punishment. This was an eradication of everything they were. Harris was visibly shaking now. "Captain, what do we do? How do we stop this?" Ren didn't have an answer. There was nothing they could do. They had ventured too far, pushed too hard, and now they were paying the price. The figure raised its arms slowly, and the darkness around them seemed to pulse with energy. Ren watched in horror as the void in front of them began to twist and stretch, like reality itself was being torn apart. "You are not the first to face this judgment," the figure continued. "Many others have come before you, seeking to understand the mysteries of the universe, but all have failed. All have been consumed." Ren clenched her fists, trying to steady her mind. She wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. There had to be a way out. They had faced impossible odds before, and they had survived. She wouldn't let humanity be wiped out so easily. But as the figure's power grew stronger, and the very fabric of existence seemed to unravel before them, Ren knew one thing for sure. This was the most difficult battle they had ever faced, and the universe was waiting for them to fail. Ren's hands gripped the command console, her knuckles white from the pressure. The figure before them loomed, its presence almost suffocating. The cold voice of judgment filled the ship once more, reverberating through their very souls. "Your fate has already been sealed," the voice intoned, heavy with finality. "The universe is not so fragile as to be influenced by the whims of a single fleeting species. You were warned. Now, prepare for extinction." As the words echoed in her mind, Ren felt a pang of fear, but also an overwhelming surge of anger. Humanity had fought against impossible odds for millennia, against war, starvation, and destruction. And yet, here they were, standing before an entity that believed them to be insignificant. "Not so fast," Ren said, her voice trembling but fierce. Her eyes met Harris's, a silent understanding passing between them. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The alien figure made no move, but its energy seemed to intensify. The darkness around them writhed as if it had a life of its own. The stars that had been obliterated by the rift now seemed to pulse, distant and cold. The weight of the universe, in all its vastness, pressed down on the small, fragile vessel that was humanity's last hope. "You think you can challenge the cosmic order?" The figure's voice was a bitter, mocking whisper now. "You who have barely begun to understand the forces at play in the universe." Ren's heart raced, but she refused to look away. "Maybe we don't understand everything," she said, "but we understand one thing. We will fight for our right to exist." Harris nodded firmly, stepping closer to Ren. "We've survived worse, and we're not going down without a fight." The figure did not respond immediately, and for a moment, there was an eerie silence. The ship drifted aimlessly in the darkness, the only sound being the soft hum of the engine struggling to stay operational. Suddenly, the darkness seemed to ripple, and from it, an array of images began to form, visions of humanity's history, both the triumphs and the tragedies. Ren saw the rise of civilization, the building of great cities, the pursuit of knowledge, and the countless wars and conflicts that had defined humanity's existence. She saw the first humans in space, the moon landing, the first contact with alien races. She saw the desperation in their eyes, the burning desire to survive. The figure spoke once more, its tone contemplative. "You have done much to advance your species, but each step forward has been marked by destruction, by violence, by ambition unchecked." Ren felt the weight of the figure's words, but she didn't flinch. "We've made mistakes, yes, but we've learned. We've grown. We've created, explored, and built. We've come to understand that there's more to this universe than power and conquest. Humanity is about perseverance. We don't give up." The figure's gaze seemed to pierce through her, as if it were searching for some flaw, some weakness. "You speak of growth, but growth comes at a cost. Your actions echo throughout the cosmos. The balance you have disrupted cannot simply be undone. The damage is too great." Ren's pulse quickened. The weight of the situation was nearly unbearable, but she couldn't let the fear take over. She wasn't going to let this unknown force erase everything humanity had worked for. No one said it would be easy, Ren said, her voice steady despite the fear threatening to engulf her. But we've survived. We've thrived. And we'll continue to fight. If you're going to erase us, then you'll have to do it yourself. For the first time, the figure paused. The swirling void around them seemed to calm, as if it too was considering Ren's words. The silence was deafening. Ren could hear her own heart pounding in her chest. Then, without warning, the figure's presence surged, and the energy around them intensified. The black void twisted, the stars returning, brighter and more vivid than before. Ren felt the pressure in her chest ease slightly. But the threat remained. "This is your final warning," the figure boomed. "You are not the first to face judgment. You will not be the last. Your survival does not rest in your hands alone. The universe has been patient, but that patience is not infinite." The darkness around them began to swirl, and Ren's eyes locked onto the figure. She could feel the weight of the cosmos bearing down on her, but she stood firm. Humanity had come too far to fall now. They had not only survived against all odds, they had thrived. Then let the universe judge us. But know this, humanity will never stop fighting, Ren said, her voice resolute. The figure's energy pulsed, its form shifting. And then, as if it had never existed at all, it began to fade, slowly at first, and then all at once. The stars returned, and the cold silence of space surrounded them once more. But this time, it was different. Ren knew the battle wasn't over. The universe had been warned, but humanity wasn't about to let anyone dictate their fate. The darkness was gone, but its shadow remained. And Ren's resolve had never been stronger. "We fight," she whispered to herself, watching as the stars twinkled above them. Humanity had not yet been defeated, and it would not be for a long time. The void of space stretched endlessly, but something had shifted. The silence, once a terrifying weight, now seemed lighter, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Ren stood in the command room, staring out at the infinite expanse through the ship's observation window. Her mind raced with everything that had just transpired. They had faced the impossible, and yet they were still here. Still fighting. Around her, the crew worked quietly, though the tension in the air was palpable. It was as though everyone knew they were on the edge of something monumental, something that could change everything. The figure, the being that had threatened to destroy humanity, was gone, but its words lingered. The universe was watching. The fate of their species was no longer just in their hands. It was in the balance of something far larger. Ren couldn't shake the thought that they had only witnessed a fraction of what was coming. They had been challenged in ways that no one could have ever predicted. Yet, despite the immense power of the being they had encountered, it had left. It had retreated. And that retreat, that final silence, spoke volumes. Perhaps the universe had underestimated humanity. A soft chime echoed throughout the ship, and Ren turned her attention back to the console. Harris's voice crackled through the comms, steady but filled with urgency. "Ren, we've detected something. It's unusual." Her heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" she asked, already bracing for another battle, another impossible challenge. "It's a signal," Harris replied. "A powerful one. Stronger than anything we've ever encountered. But it's not like the ones we've seen before." Ren's eyes narrowed. "Is it another alien species? We don't know yet, but it's coming from a distant system. It's almost like it's calling to us. Like it wants us to come." Her breath caught in her throat. The idea of an unknown entity reaching out was enough to make anyone hesitate. The universe had already shown its power, but now something else was pulling them into the unknown. Something greater. "I'm on my way," Ren said, her voice steady despite the rush of adrenaline. "Prepare the ship. We need to go there. Now." As she made her way to the bridge, her mind kept racing, unable to stop the endless questions from flooding her thoughts. Was this another test? A new enemy? Or could it be a potential ally? The possibilities swirled in her mind, each one more dangerous than the last. When Ren arrived on the bridge, she saw the team working quickly, analyzing the incoming signal. The energy readings were off the charts. It wasn't just a distress signal, nor was it some form of communication they had encountered before. It was like the universe itself was reaching out, trying to make contact. "Anything?" Ren asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The signal's coming from a binary star system," Harris reported, pointing to a display on the screen. "It's located in the far reaches of the galaxy, past the edge of known space. There's no record of any civilizations in that region. But the signal, it's unlike anything we've seen, almost like it's calling us." "Could it be a trap?" Ren asked, her instincts telling her that something wasn't quite right. "It's possible," Harris replied, looking concerned. "But something about it doesn't feel like a trap. It feels different." Ren stood there, considering their options. The unknown stretched before them, a vast and intimidating challenge, but one that had to be faced. She could feel the weight of the decision settling on her shoulders. "I know the risks," Ren said finally, her voice firm. "But we have no choice. Humanity doesn't back down. We move forward. Get ready to jump." The crew worked swiftly, preparing the ship for the journey ahead. Ren felt the familiar hum of the engines as they powered up, ready to take them deeper into the unknown than they had ever gone before. As the ship shot forward, Ren stared out at the stars. They were no longer just dots in the sky. They were a reminder of everything humanity had fought for. The journey that had begun with survival, with the struggle for a place in the universe, had now led them to a crossroads. "Whatever happens, we face it together," Ren murmured to herself. Humanity had already overcome the impossible, and now they would face what lay ahead with the same fierce determination that had always defined them. As the stars stretched into lines, the ship jumped faster and farther than ever before. They were heading into uncharted territory, into the heart of the unknown. But Ren wasn't afraid. Humanity had faced the wrath of the cosmos before, and they had come out stronger each time. And now, they were about to face something even greater. The universe had learned to fear humanity's resolve. But the question remained, what would they find at the end of the galaxy? The answers were out there, waiting for them. And humanity would be ready.